So just a little game happened on the Plains, right? And everything went absolutely crazy at Jordan-Hare. We got to talk about it at Rapport Wednesday. Rex Castillo, of course, joined by Mike Gittens, our great friend from the Rapport, co-founder and co-host. How much fun was last Saturday?
Rex, I got caught on the field, so I tried to get to midfield to get video of Hugh Freeze, and I forgot. I got a reminder that I'm 41 because the students beat me from the stands to midfield, and it was pandemonium. It took me about 15 minutes to get from midfield back to the press room. I did it. I did beat Hugh Freeze back there. But look, students rushing the field is a sign that they were starved for that win, and fans showed up. We implored fans early last week. This team hasn't quit on the coaches. They have not quit on you as the fans. Don't quit on them. Show up. And yet again, for I would say the second year straight that we played A&M on the Plains, Auburn fans created a SEC championship environment for that game for a sub-500 team. Where else are you going to find that? It was absolutely phenomenal. So we had a good time on Saturday, finally covering a win.
And so this win comes, I think, in two layers. We're so happy that Auburn at least got the split that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
But also, Cam Coleman, superstar. Jarquez, another superstar. Keandre Lambert-Smith just rises up and gets that game-winning touchdown to put them ahead, and then the defense shows up as well in the fourth overtime. The other part of that, though, is where has this been? And I think that's a big question where everyone's like, and it's not necessarily a frustration at the people in uniform. It's a lot of frustration with the people calling the plays. Am I right when that kind of pulse right there with the fans?
Yeah, because last week we said just throw Cam the damn ball. That's it. It's that simple. You guys are trying to scheme up all this. Like the better teams in the league are just getting the ball to their playmakers and they're letting them go up and make plays. They started that 2 weeks ago versus ULM. It has carried all the way over. And look what it's gotten them. It's gotten them in a position where they can make a bowl game where we thought that wasn't possible a couple weeks ago, sitting right here thinking, I don't know if they're going to win the last three, beating Texas A&M and Alabama. But look what happened to Alabama on Saturday. They didn't score a touchdown versus Oklahoma. So they look very vulnerable, particularly there in Tuscaloosa where South Carolina, probably the story of the SEC, almost went into Tuscaloosa and got a win. They lost by only 2 points. Auburn can get this game, and you're going to get this game by throwing the ball to Cam Coleman. Rex, I want to remind everybody listening, Cam Coleman decommitted from Texas A&M late in the process, committed to Auburn, and then torched them for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was the difference. And these top 5 overall guys in high school, they can be the difference between a team winning and losing. So losing Cam Coleman certainly stung, I think, for Texas A&M.
You actually led right into my next question. Alabama looks like a shell of themselves at Norman. I don't know what happened. They forgot their game on the plane or just – again, Brent Venables, got to give credit to him, the defensive coordinator for Clemson, when they beat Alabama in the Natty with Dabo. And now you mentioned it, Alabama looks vulnerable. Can Auburn get this Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa?
It's almost like the guy who took over is not the guy who left the job.
Wild.
Almost like he's not Nick Saban. Look, Alabama fans were absolutely delusional to think that they were going to lose the best coach of all time and just pick up right where he left off. He's the best coach for a reason. As an Auburn fan and alum, I can admit that. I was in awe of what he was able to do in Tuscaloosa since 2007. But this guy is not him. At SEC Media Days, I asked him, I said, what plan are you going to have for these SEC defenses? Because they're different than what you faced in the Pac, right? Show me a game that Washington had under Kalen DeBoer in the Pac where they didn't score a touchdown and lost the game. There's not one. It doesn't exist. Right. They score a touchdown every single game. So, here we are. And there's a huge chink in the armor. Alabama can be beat. They can be beat. And if you're Payton Thorne, if you're Hugh Freeze, you have a chance to do the funniest thing ever in the second year. A 5-6 Auburn team can go into Tuscaloosa and secure a bowl game while simultaneously making sure that all conversation about Alabama making the playoff ends. That would be a great story. And if you're Payton Thorne, what a legacy to leave at Auburn. I think, I don't know that anything erases the last 2 years, but man, if he can get the win on Saturday, that would be something that would be his little piece of Auburn lore forever.
And I think to talk about him a little bit, he has I think you mentioned it beautifully is that he has a complicated history with Auburn. He comes with as a guy from Michigan State, big arm. We thought he'd be another answer. When you look at the numbers, though, he's one guy. When you look what happened on the field, he's another guy. How do you explain the Payton Thorne era?
You explain it by saying they've had not so good play calling and terrible game planning for almost 2 years. All the talent has been underutilized. That includes Payton Thorne. You hear this old adage by the coaches, the quarterback gets, way too much praise and way too much of the blame when things go wrong. But look, at the end of the day, Payton Thorne is better than what we've seen on the field. Right, the guy that had a floor of 2,600 yards, he's going to be that guy this season. I think he's sitting just over 2,400 yards right now. He's passes for 200 yards. That was his floor at Michigan State. And if they make a bowl game, he might become a 3,000-yard passer. And remember, he missed 6 quarters of football when he got benched versus New Mexico.
That's right.
And he missed the first half versus Arkansas because Hank Brown started that first half. So if you add those 6 quarters back in, he might already be at that floor with one, maybe 2 games left. And since 2004, the only 2 quarterbacks to have a better single season QBR than Payton Thorne are Jason Campbell and Cam Newton.
Say that one more time, because that's elite company.
Since 2004, only 2 quarterbacks have a better single season QBR than Payton Thorne. Cam Newton, Jason Campbell. Both those guys turned in undefeated seasons. And surprisingly, Jarrett Stidham didn't have one.
That's
Nick
what I was
Marshall
about to
didn't have
mention, too.
one. And, I think that it's not been perfect,
right,
but he has hit, the big plays have certainly helped his efficiency. And he's hit them at a high rate down the field this year. Having better pass catchers down the field has helped him as well, too. But, man, if you're Payton Thorne, you have a chance here to undo a lot of wrongs that weren't caused by you.
And I think that could be a really interesting Saturday. Rivalry week is awesome. Now, there was one moment in the locker room, and Auburn released this through their social media channels, is that all the recruits were welcomed into the locker room postgame, and Hugh Freeze basically looked at them and said, y'all better get here. I think, look, funny moment, in the moment, very passionate, but there's a lot of truth to that, right, Mike? Like, this win helped secure that recruiting class, because you mentioned it too, like, you can't lose the future of Auburn with the way the season is unfolding.
Deuce Knight, there was a lot made of him visiting Ole Miss a couple weekends ago. And here you are, he's reaffirmed his commitment on social media. They're publicly pushing to flip Naeem Offord from Ohio State. He's the #1 player in the state of Alabama. And again, you're talking about another one of these top 5 kids that could come in and impact your wins and losses immediately.
AKA Cal Coleman.
Now, that's what these top 5 kids are, right? And so if you're Hugh Freeze and you're getting 1 to 2 of those every year, that's how you build a monster. But the losses on the field had started to cast some doubt about whether they could hold this recruiting class together. He came in to the press room after the locker room and said, he was asked about recruits, and he said, look, I told them that they need to join this roster, join this team and help us continue to build this roster. So it was, look, man, recruiting, I have mixed feelings about recruiting. I did a radio show yesterday with our friends over at Sports Visions, and I get it. Recruiting is important. I think that the recruiting message after a big win was somewhat disrespectful to the players in terms of that you have now. This coaching staff, they've been coaching for 2025 since they got to the Plains. And I think that this team deserved the sort of attention that they're getting right now because of the desperation that exists to win these last couple games. You should have had that desperation from game 1. Right.
Absolutely.
And so, look, I love it. I love it for recruiting. You got to hold that together. You got to look toward the future, but you got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And they have not done that so far this season. So, I love the win on Saturday. I've not ever liked the message around recruiting. You can say, hey, we need great guys, but say, hey, we have great guys and we're going to coach them up. And when you get here, you're going to be just like them because we're going to coach you up too. You're just going to start a little higher than they started.
And then, prime example, Jarquez. Jarquez Hunter is a guy who has broken his back for this team and had done everything he
could have transferred at any point.
At any point, I was thinking, could you imagine him? Kirby Smart would have scooped him up like that. Sark would have scooped him up like that. He chose to stay at Auburn, and he's had a phenomenal season. Let's switch over to the basketball court, though, because Maui is lit, y'all. So the Auburn men's basketball team in a gauntlet of a Maui Invitational, going up against Iowa State, and down 17 at one point. And I think at this point, maybe the travel got to them, the competition's different. They storm all the way back and win that thing. Your impressions of that win, what does it do for them?
Down 18 at one point and came back and won. This was reminiscent of Houston They were down double digits versus Houston, and they came back. This team has something that Bruce Pearl's previous teams have not had, and really we've only seen since 2019, since a Final Four run. They're never out of any game because they've got shooting everywhere. And my God, Rex, Tahad Pettiford just seems to show up in the biggest moments. They hit the biggest shots. Look, man, they had a 5-star last year that they thought they would get that sort of performance from. But you won a game by 2, and Tahad Pettiford was 5 for 10 for 14 points. Now, remember, let me take you back to the tournament versus Yale. Aiden Holloway didn't score a single point, and they lost by 2.
I look at that box score, and it still doesn't make sense.
Right. So these were all meaningful points. Now, Tahad's points aren't any more meaningful than Miles Kelly or Chaney Johnson, who was a monster off the bench. When the offense was struggling early, he came in and gave them a boost. Janai Broome has been the star that he's always been.
Right.
But, whew, man, they've got something cooking at Auburn men's basketball, and it's going to be fun to watch. Now, they've got 2 more games left in Hawaii. You know, I fell asleep, so
I don't blame you.
Did Dayton beat North Carolina?
Yes. North Carolina, as it's being filmed, this is being filmed on Tuesday. They will take on the Tar Heels, so that's a massive test right there.
Yeah.
One question I did want to ask.
UConn lost, though.
UConn did lose, and Dan Hurley, very animated about that. Chet Baker-Mazara has been a constant force here, and now it seems like he's gaining more confidence. He's that microwave that from the outside. How key is he going to be to this as well?
He is. Now, I don't want to call him a glue guy,
Sure.
but he's definitely an energy guy. He'll go out and he will give you 150% every single play up and down the floor, sometimes to his detriment, right? Sometimes he's got to rein it in a little bit. He got a flagrant foul late, and it wasn't malicious.
Gotcha.
But it was a little push after, and they closed a 4-point lead late in the game because of that flagrant. Look, you got with players like Chad Baker, you have to take the good with the bad. Right? He's going to hit some big shots, but he's going to make some bonehead plays at times. Look, that's just the player he is. If anybody knows how to coach a player like Chad Baker-Mazara, it's Bruce Pearl.
That's fair.
And
because KD could have been a problem anywhere else, but KD Johnson was.
He knows what to do with
He's
those
my
guys.
lunatic. That's the whole line, right?
And I'll tell you this, as somebody who knows Chad personally, he's a great kid.
That's awesome.
He's a great kid. Look, this is his best team. You need Chad Baker-Mazara. As a matter of fact, if you point back to that game versus Yale in the tournament, him getting ejected from that game early is the thing that they pointed to say, hey, if we have him, we definitely win this game.
It was deflating. It really was like taking the heart out right there. Now, look, we can go on for a whole lot because the Iron Bowl is going to be crazy. You're going to be in Tuscaloosa?
I am.
Buckle up. That could be a lot of fun. But, Mike, the War Report, tell us where we can find you online and everything like that as well.
Check us out on YouTube at The War Report. You can follow me on social media at Mike Gittens. Also, I'm doing Locked on UCF now.
Man, look, shout out to the Knights.
Tough times in Orlando right now. They lost to West Virginia this weekend, but follow me on YouTube at Locked on UCF. And you can catch me this weekend on Paul Feinbaum live on set Friday.
Hey, say hello to Paul from us, the little guys right here in Columbus. Mike, another awesome job, my friend. And look, Rivalry Week's going to be crazy. You know that we'll be here next Wednesday to talk about it, and we also got plenty of basketball to talk about.